Hi everybody, I'm Phil Liggett from World Cycling Productions. Sitting alongside me, Bill Strickland of Bicycling Magazine. And we're going to show you the 10 greatest climbs of the Tour de France from the 1990s. We'll see climbers such as Gianni Bugno, Greg LeMond, Robert Miller, Thierry Claverola, Lance Armstrong and Miguel Indurain, Jan Ullrich and of course Marco Pantani. And they'll be on climbs such as Alpe d'Huez, the Galibier, the high point of the Alps, Sestriere on the Italian-French borders and Hautacam down in the Pyrenees. And when we're done, we'll see what these climbers have to show us. Tips and techniques will help us ride better.
Thanks, Phil. It's great to be here. You've seen most of these climbs personally. Tell us what makes Alpe d'Huez in 1990 great.
Well, it started back in 1952 with the great win by Fausto Coppi, but we never went back then until the 70s, but since then it became the shrine of cycling, especially for the Dutch cyclists. But in 1990, when Ronan Poncet was in the lead overall, it was the Italian Gianni Bugno who showed everybody how to climb the Alp. And just before the finish too, Greg LeMond almost made a mistake, which could have cost him the Tour de France. Let's have a look at that day. Delgado immediately takes charge on the climb, pressurizing Bugno, Chozas, LeMond and Claverola. 2.5 minutes behind, Robert Miller and Claude Coquillon leads the chase for Pensec, as Breukink follows on comfortably behind them all. Claverola cannot keep pace on this steepest part of the 13 kilometers climb, and he too falls back. This leaves just Bugno and LeMond in Delgado's wake. Behind, Indurain is caught and passed by the chase group. It's still being headed by Claude Coquillon, while Chiappucci, Colombian rider Abelardo Rondon and Pensec look quite at ease. Robert Miller rides particularly hard, followed by his teammate Pensec, Coquillon and Andy Hampsten. Pensec is defending his yellow jersey with energy and honour, focusing totally on the slim figure ahead of him of a seemingly tireless Robert Miller. Remarkably, Claverola is catching back to the leaders. Delgado has suddenly tired, while Greg LeMond still follows and Bugno still waits. The Alpe d'Huez climb is seeing yet another epic battle. Eric Breukink has ridden away from the chasers. And 3 kilometers from the summit, after a magnificent chase, he catches the 4 leaders. Behind, Andy Hampsten is showing his best climbing form for years, as Pensec hangs on at the back. At the front, Delgado is also dropped, as Breukink increases the pace. Thierry Claverola fights back yet again into contention, but he's dropped once more, as another acceleration by Breukink can only be followed by Greg LeMond and Gianni Bugno. They all want to win this most prestigious of stages. 1 kilometer from the finish now. Para continues to approach Thierry Claverola, and Pensec still follows Miller and Claude Coquillon. Through the ski village of Alpe d'Huez, this is now a classic battle. The 3 leaders are preparing their finishing effort and slow down. And Thierry Claverola, again he sprints up to join them. Para joins the leaders as well, and 5 men head into the final corner, where LeMond dives between Bugno and Breukink and almost falls. LeMond manages to correct himself, and he leads out the sprint from Bugno. The others are beaten. At first, LeMond appears to be winning. But as the finish line approaches, Gianni Bugno is just too strong and takes LeMond right on the line. He's the first Italian winner here since 1952.
That was in the Alps. In the same year in the Pyrenees, we saw one of the craziest attacks ever in the Tour.
Yes, we did. The situation had changed on the road to Les Ardennes because the riders had to climb over the mountains, Tourmalet, and it was here where Claudio Chiappucci went on the attack. We love this guy because he made unpredictable moves. He was in the race leader's yellow jersey, but of course he was afraid of the big names chasing him down. Names like Greg LeMond, Miguel Indurain, Pedro Delgado. These were the riders who wanted to beat him. Indurain had yet to have his wonderful period in the mountains as a winner of the Tour, but right now he was in the group that would chase him down, and once we started that climb to Les Ardennes, the picture took on a new feeling. Chiappucci, out in front since the start of the Aspin, still has Brunel and 3 other riders for company. But when you are the race leader, you tend to have to do all of the work, while Greg LeMond here and Pedro Delgado rely on their teammates to set the pace. This gives you an idea as to just how steep the final corners of the Tourmalet are, and Torres climbs it very well. More than 2 minutes later, the elite group heads towards the summit. Indurain is a revelation in this Tour de France. Surely now he must regret having played such an unselfish role in the Alps to help Delgado. The group goes over the top knowing that the chase must be fast and determined if Chiappucci, the brilliant Chiappucci, is to be brought back to heel. Miguel Martinez Torres has no illusions of winning the Tour de France, just a stage. He is far too far behind overall, while Greg LeMond launches the attack on the descent to cut back the lead of Chiappucci, now only just ahead. The chase downhill lasts for more than 20 minutes at speeds of 90 kilometers an hour. The checks indicate, though, that Chiappucci will soon be caught, and so he is. At the base of the final climb, the yellow jersey is caught after an attack that will find a place in the colourful history of the Tour de France. Chiappucci still sits at the front of the reformed field as the final climb begins, but now he has the most feared names alongside him, except that of Eric Breukink, who's had a mechanical problem and a bad day in the Pyrenees. Greg LeMond has chased for most of the day. He has now caught his quarry, the race leader, the Maillot Jaune, and he sits and watches him. Marino Lajaretta takes LeMond's wheel. Conti follows, and soon everybody has moved across the road. There's one man, though, who finds he can't. The yellow jersey of Claudio Chiappucci is falling back. The gamble of the day appears now to have been the biggest mistake of the day. Miguel Indurain, Marina Lajaretta are the only 2 riders now who have matched the speed of Greg LeMond. Surprisingly, Pedro Delgado has dropped away. But Delgado hasn't dropped away quite as far as the yellow jersey of Claudio Chiappucci. He still lived in hope that he would lead the Tour by the end of the day. LeMond was thinking now in terms of seconds. Every second he gained over the field meant a second closer the Maillot Jaune of the Tour de France. And so, with 3 kilometers to go, Lajaretta was dropped off the back, while Lajaretta's teammate, Miguel Martinez Torres, was finally caught. He'd been off the front. Now there was nobody in front of these 2 riders. It was purely a matter of which one would win and how much time they would gain over the yellow jersey. And surely, too, Miguel Indurain was badly regretting now waiting for his teammate Pedro Delgado down in the valley road towards the climb of Alpe d'Huez, because had he not lost so much time on that day, he might have been a real challenger now to Greg LeMond and Claudio Chiappucci. Les Ardennes was becoming one of the most famous climbs in the Tour de France, just like Alpe d'Huez did in the last decade. Just look at the people here now. They had come from far and wide. This was a great festive day, but it was above all the day that they thought the Tour de France would be decided. LeMond knew he needed time and needed it on this climb, because tomorrow there is no great climbs on the course. It would leave just one time trial before the finish in Paris. He needed time, and he needed it now over Claudio Chiappucci. He was not concerned about the stage victory, and quite clearly that most certainly was in the mind of Miguel Indurain, who was waiting for his moment. And the cheers were still there too for Claudio Chiappucci. For anybody watching it on television all day, they know just what a great ride he'd put in. To the final bend, and at last Miguel Indurain lines up for the finish. Greg LeMond is grateful for his back wheel, but not for long. Indurain applies the pressure, just enough to crack the world champion. Greg LeMond's pacemaking up the hill had been formidable, but Indurain now was thinking only of the stage victory. It reminded one a little bit of the battle between Greg LeMond and Laurent Fignon a year ago on top of the Col de Peyresourde and Super Bagnères. Then, of course, it was Fignon going clear. This time, it was Indurain. Round the final bend, the finish banner was in sight, and after 7 hours of riding at an incredible average speed of 39 kilometers an hour, the Spaniard Miguel Indurain wins this classic stage. Greg LeMond arrived just 6 seconds behind him. And then the media move in. Had Greg LeMond taken the race lead? The clock was counting down. Claudio Chiappucci was alone now. He'd been alone for most of the day, really, because nobody had been willing to help him. He sprinted up to the line with the clock still counting down, and when he crossed it, he'd kept his yellow jersey by just 5 seconds.
Did you think the Tour de France might be won today in this stage?
It's won today. It's not over to Champs-Élysées, but if I'm going to win, it's won today, no doubt.
And Greg did indeed win the Tour that year, staying in the Pyrenees, but a year later, we got to stage 13.
This is a massive stage, Bill. It went up Val Laurent, 232 kilometers, a long way indeed. And you know, it highlighted the arrival of Miguel Indurain because he went on to win his first of 5 tours. But before then, we now knew that Claudio Chiappucci was no flash in the pan. This was the day that he figured so highly and got himself right up on the overall classification too. Greg LeMond was now under severe pressure. He found that the man he used to call Cappuccino was a bit stronger than a cup of coffee, and he really was a strong bike rider. Gianni Bugno, riding in the champion of Italy's jersey, the race leader at the moment, was Luc Leblanc, the great Frenchman who never quite got out of the world of cycling exactly what he put back in. But it was a big battle through Val Laurent, and as I say, the man who came to the forefront, and he stayed there for quite a long time, was Indurain. There's a lot of skill involved in going down as well as going up, and it was on the way down that Miguel Indurain put in the attack. He'd noticed that Greg LeMond had lost contact towards the top, and he'd attacked immediately. By the time Greg LeMond had rejoined that chase group, Miguel Indurain had gone in fact for the rest of the day. Claudio Chiappucci decided the time was right to try and press on and join Miguel Indurain, and surprisingly no one in the lead group chased him. Indurain was told that Chiappucci was coming up towards him, and in fact he slackened off the pace to allow Chiappucci to join him. Soon there would be 2 riders in the lead, and the rest of the Tour de France should have taken notice. While further down the road by a couple of minutes, Laurent Fignon had completed one of the rides of his life, and he's done plenty, and was catching back to the Le Mans group. He'd be disappointed to find that 2 riders were missing though, Indurain and Chiappucci. Fignon joins at the back. Now the riders were strengthened by a great cyclist, and watch this. He doesn't even give them the courtesy of a glance, and they don't look at him either. He goes straight to the front and immediately tries to leave them. Greg LeMond knows Laurent Fignon only too well. He immediately takes his wheel. LeMond at this stage was still feeling strong. He still felt he could defend in this Tour de France. He tried on the Tourmalet. They caught him off guard when Indurain had attacked on the descent, but there was still a chance he could fight back. The 2 riders were forming a perfect partnership. Indurain was setting the pace no more than Claudio Chiappucci. Chiappucci, don't forget, although he finished second in the Tour de France a year ago, has never won a stage in any major cycling tour, and now he was having his best chance. He was a long way behind Miguel Indurain in the overall classification as well. At the start of the day, he was 8 minutes 51 seconds behind Luc Leblanc, while Indurain was 4 minutes and 22. Le Mans seemed to be one of the few riders in the chase group realizing the urgency of the attack. He was continuing to try and stretch them, to try and tempt somebody out to come and join him. Gianni Bugno was one of those riders, and quickly Le Mans takes his wheel. The riders climbed up towards the top of the Col d'Aspin. There was continuing regrouping. Hamston was back, so too was Motte, and the group was once again more or less complete. Chiappucci at the other end was building up a nice lead in the King of the Mountains competition, while of course Miguel Indurain was thinking more of winning the Tour de France. Le Mans was now beginning to show signs of being a tired man, yet his very spirit wouldn't allow him to drop away from the front of the chase group. He loves the Tour de France. He cannot believe anybody else can beat him to the win in Paris. He still continued to drive this breakaway along, although inside he could not have felt very well at all. While at the front, Miguel Indurain and Claudio Chiappucci were driving a train which was becoming a runaway. Major time gaps were now opening over the rest of the field. The main field was reported to be more than 12 minutes behind. That was if you could find a main field. These riders were riding at around 4 minutes back. The gaps were now enormous. The panic bells really should have been ringing, but could they do anything about it? They'd found two riders who had committed themselves to what they knew would be the hardest stage of the Tour de France. They'd waited 2 weeks, they'd watched every move, they gambled on missing big breakaways. Now they were having their day, and the other stars of the Tour were all on the defensive. And with the two leaders at the front of the road, further down, Greg LeMond, a bizarre crash, hit from the back by the team car of Gianni Bugno. In fact, Gianni Bugno had just attacked, and the team car was going forward to service him, and Greg LeMond was hit from behind. It was a bizarre accident, and in fact the team manager serviced LeMond and later sought him out to apologise for the error. LeMond just got on with the job in hand. It would upset his rhythm though. Now he had to try and get back into it again. The two leaders, of course, were unaware of what was happening further down the mountain, and the climbers were now spread over many, many minutes. It was still a good 2.5 minutes back to Bugno, Motte, Fignon, and even further back to Hamston, LeMond, Chozas and Rouet. And the main field, men like Pedro Delgado, were over 10 minutes behind. LeMond was still being left to do the majority of the work. What a great fighter this American is. The other three were just following him. Up towards the top of the Col d'Aspin, no big sprint here. Over the top of the Col d'Aspin, just 36 kilometres remain of this really severe stage. Gianni Bugno, Charlie Motte and Laurent Fignon were the next riders to head up the Aspin, but they were now 2 minutes and 15 seconds behind the two leaders. Bugno realised only too well now he'd made a big mistake in allowing Indurain and Chiappucci such an early escape. But you know, in big-time cycle racing, it's sometimes worth gambling on a long one, and that's exactly what Indurain had planned to do. Only Chiappucci had realised it. The climb of Val Thorens was a climb with an average gradient of in excess of 9%, and it was around about 7 kilometres to the finishing line. The two leaders now were well clear. The three chasers were just trying to limit their losses at this point. Gianni Bugno still felt he had some fight left in him and was waiting for the chance now to shed himself of Laurent Fignon and Charlie Motte. Further down though, Greg LeMond was now in all sorts of trouble, and this group had been joined by LeMond's teammate Eric Boyer. Boyer was riding at the front, trying to tempt Greg LeMond to keep up with him. The yellow jersey, by the way, of Luc Leblanc had gone over the top of the Col d'Aspin with a deficit of 6 minutes and 42 seconds. And that, believe me, is a long way behind the lead. This was the first time in any Tour de France for Greg LeMond he had taken a big packet. He'd hit the wall in a big way. Two minutes is the sign that comes from the official car, Albert Vouvet telling Gianni Bugno he is 2 minutes behind the two riders who have tried all day to steal the show. And Laurent Fignon still continues to fight. He recovered from that long chase across the valley road, and he's still riding a great race in the Pyrenees. Charlie Motte hanging on to a rejuvenated Fignon. Greg LeMond was suffering silently behind the wheel of Eric Boyer, just hoping soon the finishing line would be with him. Of course, all of his critics were saying, which day would he now give up the Tour de France, because for sure he was never going to win it. One of the two riders in the lead seems certain now, barring accident, to win this year's Tour de France. They built such a lead over everybody else, and the design of this course this year was such there was only 2 more mountain stages to come and 1 time trial. All the road races in between were really for the sprinters or the gamblers. Even the Basques were cheering a Frenchman here because they had their man in the lead, and Fignon wasn't too impressed. The final kilometre, the red kite in the sky, and Miguel Indurain, as he so often does in the Pyrenees, was heading up towards the chance of a stage win. He's won twice in the Pyrenees before, in fact in nearby valleys. He wasn't going to win for a third time, as Claudio Chiappucci sprints ahead to take the victory by 1 second. Chiappucci's first ever big stage win in a major stage race. He was absolutely delighted. But of course the man who is now the new name in the Tour de France is Miguel Indurain. He was to become now the new leader and the man to pull on the leader's yellow jersey. He was now going to lead this race by 3 minutes. Gianni Bugno came home, he hung on, and he improved over those last few kilometres. He actually finished 1 minute and 29 seconds behind Chiappucci. There was still just an element of doubt as to who would win this year's Tour de France. And the great performance by Laurent Fignon. He finished 4th, 2 minutes 50 seconds back. What did it take out of him?
A year later, again in stage 13, Chiappucci gave us what I know you, Phil, have described as one of the greatest rides ever in the Tour.
No question. If I'd have been around in the days of Fausto Coppi, I might have seen some epic escapes, but this, in modern cycling, was the epic escape. Claudio Chiappucci ripped through the Alps, headed for Italy, his home nation. He did it with a brilliant breakaway, and of course he won the stage. It meant that in the end, Miguel Indurain really had to sort himself out and launch an attack to stop losing his race lead. It was the most brilliant stage, and really I couldn't find the words to aptly describe what was one of the escapes of the Tour de France, any Tour de France. Heading up now towards the next climb, the Col de Liseron. This is the big one here. It was all around this area in February where the Winter Olympics were held and based in Albertville. And it wasn't the time to come and look at this mountain because it was covered in snow. But just look at the pace now by the man in the polka dot jersey. He's placed the yellow jersey in serious problems here. Pascal Lino is a long, long way back further down the Col de Liseron. Claudio Chiappucci has not waited for the last climbs of the stage to put in an attack. He's gone right at the beginning. He's done this before in previous Tours de France. It must be causing consternation amongst the leaders. And this is the best of the rest, as it were, as they're trying to reform behind. Greg LeMond is in this group. He's in trouble on the Col de Liseron. Greg LeMond struggling a little bit, just as he was in the Pyrenees 1 year ago. LeMond is going backwards today, and backwards very, very quickly indeed. And that is a sad sight. I think Greg secretly, you know, has been worried about these mountains coming each day. He's tried throughout this Tour de France to gain time on the flatter stages, to give himself a better springboard into the Alps, and it hasn't come. And this is the rider who is destroying Greg LeMond today. Claudio Chiappucci, second in the Tour de France last year, second for the last 2 years in the Tour of Italy. He's attacked virtually at the drop of the flag today, and now he's tapping out the rhythm all by himself. And just look at this over the top of the climb. Over the top first then, no doubt about it. Now, this is an escape of magnitude by Claudio Chiappucci. And Chiappucci, in no hurry to push home his advantage, but he's heading rapidly now to becoming the race leader of the Tour de France on the road. And the rest of the riders are going to have to chase him down if they want to. Well, they used to laugh at Claudio Chiappucci, and they don't laugh at him anymore. If we had 10 Claudio Chiappuccis in the Tour de France, I don't think there'd be more than 10 finishes. This rider never knows when to stop racing. And don't forget, the magnet of his home country now is being drawn towards Sestriere. 1952, the Tour de France had ended in Sestriere with a stage, and the winner then, none less than Fausto Coppi. In many people's eyes, the greatest cyclist who ever lived. Coppi now will be delighted at the way this young man is taking the riders on in the Tour de France today. But it looks to me as though Indurain himself has climbed his way steadily up to the back wheel of the world champion. So there's no doubt then who Indurain considers his main challenger for this year's Tour de France. As we go up to the top of the climb now, of the Col de Montcheny, and it's still the same man at the front. He's won every climb today in the Alps, and that is going to give him a near unassailable lead in the King of the Mountains competition. As they come up towards the top of the climb, we've got Bugno and Indurain now chasing them down. So the big names, it's been a struggle, but they've forced their way to the front here. 3 minutes and 33 seconds down on Claudio Chiappucci. That's a long way. And the Maillot Jaune, by the way, Lino, is 5.5 minutes down on Chiappucci, and that will keep him out of the yellow jersey. Chiappucci could be in yellow tonight. The man he's got to worry about, and indeed the man who's worried about him, is Miguel Indurain. He is now trying to chase down Claudio Chiappucci, and that is going to be some chase. They've been joined there, so it looks as though Bugno, Indurain, Hampsten and Vona have got themselves together. Oh dear me, look at the face now of Claudio Chiappucci, because he's on the last climb. This is the climb up to Sestriere itself. Surely he's not going to crack now. This has been an escape of magnitude. Some 190 kilometers in the lead so far for Claudio Chiappucci, and this will go in the history books as one of the escapes of any Tour de France in modern times. Indurain knows it too, and this is the first time we've seen Indurain come out in this race and have to take on the racing himself and not rely on his team to close this race down. The only time that Indurain has really put his own effort into this race has been in the first time trial at Luxembourg. He built himself such a comfortable lead there. He hasn't really had a chance or wanted to do anything so far, but now he knows if he's going to save this Tour de France, he's got to stop Chiappucci, and he's got to stop him today. Indurain isn't worried about his finished position today. He's more worried about the actual time gains of Claudio Chiappucci, who could be heading for the Maillot Jaune right now, because Pascal Lino is in terrible trouble and losing a lot of time today. The yellow jersey could be the return now after this marvellous ride by Claudio Chiappucci. It will go down as one of the finest escapes I've ever seen in any of 20 Tours de France, and the Italians know it too. They're trying to coax, pull and drag their man home in Italy. The Tour de France very rarely makes an incursion into Italy, and surely now they're not going to allow Claudio Chiappucci to lose not just the stage win, but the manner in which he has won this race. He's not been afraid of anybody in this year's Tour. He's attacked the minute this stage has started, and I can't believe when he attacked at the beginning of today's stage of 254 kilometres, he really expected to be in this position now coming up to the finish. Look at this crowd. And even the motorbikes are in the way now, and this is really unfortunate because you lose your rhythm. And actually, Chiappucci just asking the crowd to pull back. Let him see the road to the finish, please, at Sestriere. It's not just for the stage win. Every push of those pedals is gaining time, he hopes, but Indurain now is trying desperately to bridge the gap. So the arrival of Claudio Chiappucci, and this will be remembered as one of the finest escapes in the history of the Tour de France, in the manner of Fausto Coppi. All he's got to do now is hang on just long enough to come to the finishing line. All of his folks are waiting for him in Sestriere. He's climbed over the top of the Col de Cézanne, the Cornet de Roselon, the Col de Liseron, the Col de Montcheny, and now the climb at Sestriere. Maximum points today in the King of the Mountains, maximum in the Accolade Stakes as well for Claudio Chiappucci. Time will tell whether he's done enough to take the overall lead. He certainly stitched up the King of the Mountains in this year's Tour de France. And just look at this now, the moment of adulation. Claudio Chiappucci has pulled off one of the finest rides in the modern history of the Tour de France in the manner of that great Campionissimo Fausto Coppi. He'll go down in the history books by the end of this stage, and his face tells the story.
Stage 11 in 1993 features an epic climb that really looks like an epic.
Well, the Col de Vars at 2,109 metres, followed by the Bonnet at 2,800, the highest road in France, by the way. They call it the Col de Bonnet because it goes round in the circle at the top, and then finishing at Isola 2,000, an all-category climb. This was one for the record books as well. It was a great battle. Tony Rominger was in the thick of it, of course. Laurent Fignon decided to give up, and it highlighted the brilliant climbing of the Scot Robert Miller on the Col de la Bonnet. A marvellous stage, and one to remember. And on the Restafond, the riders now trying to get some semblance of order here, because this is a very, very long climb indeed. It takes them more than an hour as they try to be, they're under the policemanship here of the class team, and Indurain is the man that they're worried about. Again on the inside, the smooth pedaling rider, Tony Rominger, and Indurain concentrating totally on him. He sees him as now the man to beat, although Mechia, the rider to the right of our picture there in the blue jersey, is in second place overall, and Jaskula, I haven't quite caught a glimpse of him yet. If he's in this group, he's third. But Rominger is the man that Indurain fears most in the mountains. And Delgado is now being dropped by Robert Miller. Well, Miller is going alone, and I'm not sure that's a wise thing to do so early on, because there's a long way to go to the finish here. And Robert Miller is facing a long, hot ride by himself. It's a strange climb, the Col de la Bonnet. It really is like the shape of a hat, because the riders climb to the top and they go round the side of the bonnet, and then they descend away down to the left of our picture, back down to the bottom and the finish, before they have to climb, of course, up through Isola 2000. That's a climb the Tour de France has never before gone up, and it's very, very steep. And Miller now on his own. His lead is 45 seconds. Well, Miller, when he rides well like this, is magnificent to watch. Now riding his 11th Tour de France. Rode his first tour back in 1983, and that was when we first saw the Scots' great talent. Finished 14th that year. He's Delgado now going back to the select group containing Indurain, and among others Jaskula is also there, so too is Rominger, Mechia. I think Hampson is there as well. I'm not too sure though whether in fact Eric Breukink is there, and he could be the big name that's missing. So Robert Miller on his way at the front, but facing a long, tough ride to the finish if he's going to survive for his first ever stage win in the Alps. And now you can see it. That's the bonnet, and the right is the road that goes right round the bonnet before they come back virtually on themselves. At one stage, there is about a 40-yard stretch of road where they cross each other as they begin the descent away down to the bottom before the climb to Isola. Now Miller making progress towards the summit. Well, he made his move right at the base of this climb at the 101 kilometers point today. That's about 63 miles, and leaving himself a long, long way to go. Slightly into the second half of the stage today. Well, there's no need yet, Robert, to look over your shoulder, because the next group is around about 1 minute behind. The next climb, the last climb of the day, will be the climb of Isola 2000. They welcome the Tour de France for the first time, and they've named all of the corners after the past greats of this great event. There aren't too many corners. You can see the slope going right down ahead of us. There's just a right-hand bend that brings the riders through, and we've now accomplished that as we begin to regroup at the base of the climb up to Isola 2000. And that's the face of Miller now as he struggles on the climb, and that is the sad sight because they're bringing him back. Well, Miller has had a tremendous breakaway, but I don't think he will survive the attacks that are going to come for sure now. They will launch the attacks, and Chiappucci has come up to this group with a marvellous descent off the top of the La Bonnet, because he was something like 3 minutes down on the climb. He's bridged that gap, and he's done it all with a very, very good descent of La Bonnet. So, a poor start to the Alps might be a nice finish for Claudio Chiappucci. As he starts the climb here, and the rider right alongside him is Bjorn Ries. There's another surprise now. Bjorn Ries, free of his team leader, Moreno Argentin, who's changed teams this year. And Ries now free to ride his own race, and he's having a great tour. Early leader in the King of the Mountains, but quite honestly, nobody would have expected Bjorn Ries to be in at the kill after a day like this. Indurain still showing no signs of feeling the pressure. Rominger setting the pace but not cracking the master. 4 kilometers to the top, 2.5 miles to climb, and Indurain content now to set the pace, and seemingly Rominger content to follow it. They've tamed the devil. He's now riding no-handed in third place, no doubt about thinking of something else, but will you believe this? Miller's only just come on and he's gone. Robert Miller has gone again, inside 4 kilometers to go. I don't know where he's found the effort from, but Miller has gone, and that is a superb piece of riding by the Scotsman. Robert Miller, who has done so much on the climb of La Bonnette, he was caught right as this climb began. He's gone again, and Indurain has not responded. He wants somebody else to do it. Indurain is watching the one man he fears. He's got him in second place, Tony Rominger. Jaskula is sitting at the back, and one has to say Zenon Jaskula has followed wheels these past 2 days, but he's followed them very, very well indeed. Bjorn Ries is still up here as well. Mechia Kipucci has found his second life. And now they're leaving it to Indurain to try and bring back Robert Miller. Obviously, Miller had sensed that the time was right, but it looks now as though Indurain is the man who's going to spoil a great day out for Robert Miller. He's a man we always expect to ride well in the Pyrenees. He's won there before, but he's never won in the Alps, and it looks now as though he won't be winning this year either, because this is the last day in the Alps, and it's been a real sort out of the men from the rest. There's no doubt now that the winner and the top places from this year's Tour de France is going to come from this very elite group. As we pass underneath the 2 kilometers to go banner, Jaskula still hanging on there. I think he's got his braces caught to the saddle of Mechia. And Indurain now just sitting there, pedaling straight by Miller, doesn't even look at him. Miller looking to who the last man is. He's going to try and snatch the wheel and hold on. Rominger through on his wheel. Kipucci, Mechia. And just look at the lovely crowd here for the first time now on Isola 2000. They talk of this as the new Alpe d'Huez of the Tour de France, and maybe one day it will be. It's a tough climb, a kilometer to go, and I think it's Jaskula. Yes, it was. Jaskula's waited to see that red kite in the sky, and immediately Rominger says, "You're not spoiling the party now," has gone across to him. And well, you might have guessed it, that Indurain is the man who's marking Rominger everywhere. And they go straight by Jaskula, and Rominger has been forced to make the counter-offensive, and indeed Indurain has just gone straight up to him with all the ease of a champion. And that's all he wanted to do as well. Indurain has got his wheel. Now, can he reverse the result of yesterday? Because Rominger is in with a chance of doing 2 in a row. I think it was Joop Zoetemelk who last did that in the mountains when he won 2 straight stages. Rominger, who's ridden the Tour de France twice before, and you wouldn't have known he was ever in it, is now a great man and a great threat. Champion's the word, and we're looking at 2 of them. As Rominger now is going to have to lead out. Indurain has got the advantage. Indurain trying to get the inside of a sharp bend and take it first. 100 meters to go. Indurain's got the inside. Indurain might well be taking the stage. He'd like to do. He's set up. He's realised the speed was too much. Tony Rominger has got the stage victory. And then coming home here in third place, it looks as though we've now got Claudio Chiappucci has come back into this Tour de France, although in all reality he's lost too much time. He gets third place. Jaskula is also there in fourth, and there's the gallant hero of the day. Robert Miller is coming home slightly detached in that last 2 kilometers, but really he did deserve the win, and he rode a great stage.
Now we jump to 1996, when the Col de Madeleine and some rain gave us an epic climb.
Yes, after calling victory in the Tour de France by Miguel Indurain for 5 years, it was now the turn of Bjorn Ries, but in the yellow jersey, Stefan Erlo dropped and sick, abandoned in the race leader's yellow jersey in tears, and that was a sad sight. Only the 12th time ever that a race leader has abandoned in the Tour de France. Johan Bruneel found the difficulties of the Tour de France too. He slipped off the edge of one of the sides, as did many riders on this occasion, a lot of riders being very lucky to escape serious injury. And it was made famous too by the attacks of Bjorn Ries, Laurent Dufaux, Luc Leblanc, Peter Luttenberger and Richard Virenque. The brave souls who have come up onto the climb of the Cormet de Roseland, which has come after 163 kilometres. An attack there by Bjorn Ries, champion of Denmark, but not so at the back of the race, because I think there is the odd tear in the eyes there of Stefan Erlo. 3 days in the Maillot Jaune in his first Tour de France, and the way he's riding there, I think it's all over for him. Well, they brought back Bjorn Riis. Riis had a meeting in November with his team and promised them he could win the Tour. The majority of the meeting have laughed so far, but you know, he does look to have good form. If they believe in Riis and give him the support, who knows? Laurent Dufaux. And Dufaux, in fact, a minute 15 behind the leader on the road, Bolt. But look at this man, he was the leader of the Tour de France. He has signalled to his team car, it's all over. Well, I think by my reckoning, he is only the 12th man to leave the Tour de France wearing the Maillot Jaune, and Stéphane Herlot, he does have a problem. I think his tendonitis in his right knee. He is out of the Tour, and that is very, very sad. We're back up at the front now, and Dufaux has in fact joined, not joined, but passed Udo Bolt, the attacking rider, who went clear on the climb of the Cormet de Roselend. He has now been caught and dropped as we've gone over the top of the Bourg of the Prime at Bourg Saint-Maurice. And now Laurent Dufaux is going to make a bid as we join the rather narrow roads here on the descents that are bound, but at least the sun has come out. There's some very, very difficult descents on the Cormet de Roselend. Oh my goodness me! And that is a rider from Rabobank who has gone clean off into this ravine here on the descent of the Cormet de Roselend. And in fact, it is Johan Bruneel who has gone down, but he looks perfectly okay. What a shock. And in fact, can you believe this? This man is just looking for another bike. I doubt whether they'll get the other one back. And there it is, Johan Bruneel, who's having a great ride. He was with the main chase group on the mountain. Straight back into the fray and hardly a look backwards. Absolutely amazing. But you know, the leaders have got themselves together today. They've just tested one another out, but they've kept themselves basically together. That's Luc Leblanc, who seems to be moving up for an attack. He's gone straight up to the front, and Luc Leblanc going clear. No real reaction here. No suicide runs on this first day in the Alps. Indurain looking good at the front. Spanish flag, or rather the Belgian flag there, being shown to a Swiss rider, and a counter-attack here. Now here's a man that everybody already is beginning to talk about, and this is the rider from the Carrera squad, Luttenberger. First Tour de France for him. I saw him race in South Africa as an amateur. He's a superb climber. He's gone straight up to the side of Richard Virenque, rather Richard Virenque has come up behind Luttenberger, and because he doesn't want him to get too much of a lead, as Luc Leblanc heads up towards the finish at Les Arcs, ironically now in the sun. What a day this has turned out to be. The King of the Mountains has been dropped. We have seen the yellow jersey abandoned. We know of one bad crash to Johan Bruneel, who has climbed back on his bike. And now we're heading up towards the finish here, and the race is beginning to fragment. And that's Zula and Indurain. Indurain has been dropped here. This is not the going forward part of the group, this is the going backward part of the group. Miguel Indurain has been passed by Alex Zula. Indurain is in trouble, and that is something we have never seen during the last 5 tours. Miguel Indurain is in trouble here. He's being tailed off by Zula. There are plenty of riders ahead, and in fact, he has called for a drink. Now, it's not allowed to accept a drink at this stage of the race under the race regulations. If he takes anything, he will be fined. He'll get a small time penalty. I think the first offence is 10 seconds. And in fact, the drink offered there it wasn't from his team car. He took one look at it and threw it away. So maybe the referees will turn a blind eye on that. As we go up to the leader, the man here who is setting the pace, he will not know the drama that's going on behind him. We have actually seen Miguel Indurain crack on a mountain stage. Maybe the weather really did get to him, but Luc Leblanc is stamping on those pedals and heading up towards the finish now at Les Arcs. And he's going to win the stage just like he did at Hautecam. This is going to be a great return for Luc Leblanc, and he would have been so high up the overall classification, but for that first day crash when we saw him lying on the right-hand side of the road. It really did look on that first day that his Tour de France was over. It's turned right around now. Luc Leblanc comes to the line and takes the great victory at Les Arcs. But here's the story of the day. They've all crossed the line on top of the mountain, including now the pink jersey of Alex Zula. While behind we have Miguel Indurain in all sorts of... Look at the clock. 3.5 minutes to Zula, and it's still counting to Miguel Indurain. You know, this man could have lost the Tour de France on this one bad day in the Alps. He's clearly hit the wall. He's been unhappy with the weather. The weather has been atrocious, but it's come good here at Les Arcs. Maybe he's finished up with too many clothes on. He's hyperventilated, but whatever the reason, Miguel Indurain today appears human, and he's never done that for the past 6 years of the Tour de France.
Later in 1996, on stage 16, Bjarne Riis gave us one of the most vicious climbing attacks we've seen.
That's right, Bill, he did. And in fact, the thing about Hautacam is you tend to start in the sunshine around Lourdes and then you climb up into the mist of the climb. And this was a great show by Bjarne Riis. This is where he frightened all of the opposition away, I think, because he was so dominant. Riis now made sure he was going to win the Tour de France, and the only rival he would have, really, was his own teammate, a certain Jan Ullrich. Original breakaways all swept up. It's been a good day of racing by just a handful of riders trying to slip away, but they haven't managed to do that. The team car on the left of our picture there was TVM, which means we must be coming up on Laurent Roux. The indications are the gaps have been closing all of the time. Miguel Indurain, who was on the attack with Luc Leblanc 2 years ago, conceded the stage win, but really did kill off all of his rivals, sitting there near the front of the pack. And one or two riders beginning to find the sting in the tail here, not least Tony Rominger. There's Evgeny Berzin, who's been rather quiet since he got his good hiding on the road to Sestriere in the Alps. But maybe he'll come back into his own on this climb. He's clearly hit the wall. He's been unhappy with the weather. The weather has been atrocious, but it's come good here at Les Arcs. Maybe he's finished up with too many clothes on. He's hyperventilated, but whatever the reason, Miguel Indurain today appears human, and he's never done that for the past 6 years of the Tour de France.
Later in 1996, on stage 16, Bjarne Riis gave us one of the most vicious climbing attacks we've seen.
That's right, Bill, he did. And in fact, the thing about Hautacam is you tend to start in the sunshine around Lourdes and then you climb up into the mist of the climb. And this was a great show by Bjarne Riis. This is where he frightened all of the opposition away, I think, because he was so dominant. Riis now made sure he was going to win the Tour de France, and the only rival he would have, really, was his own teammate, a certain Jan Ullrich. Original breakaways all swept up. It's been a good day of racing by just a handful of riders trying to slip away, but they haven't managed to do that. The team car on the left of our picture there was TVM, which means we must be coming up on Laurent Roux. The indications are the gaps have been closing all of the time. Miguel Indurain, who was on the attack with Luc Leblanc 2 years ago, conceded the stage win, but really did kill off all of his rivals, sitting there near the front of the pack. And one or two riders beginning to find the sting in the tail here, not least Tony Rominger. There's Evgeny Berzin, who's been rather quiet since he got his good hiding on the road to Sestriere in the Alps. But maybe he'll come back into his own on this climb. Nobody willing. Bjarne Riis seems to be moving up and down the race group here, taking a good look at the riders in the front. There he is, number 21. He's just looked across at one or two of the faces. He keeps on doing it. He's riding alongside the man I think he might think will attack. 111 there, Luc Leblanc. Abraham Olana, Piotr Ugrimov, Evgeny Berzin, all of the big names are still in this front group. Going off from the side of Virenque is Bjarne Riis, and now from Ullrich. Ullrich looks across at him, and you know, Ullrich has sort of sat back there and allowed his team captain to accelerate. And well, having said that, they've come back to him. And the rider who's brought them back is Miguel Indurain. Today we have got to see the start of the return of Miguel if he's going to get back all of the time he has lost. The majority of it, of course, coming on the climb to Les Arcs more than a week ago. The yellow jersey, it's a fine sight when the man who leads the Tour has all of the strength to dominate the front of the main group, as he's doing here. There's nobody in front of this group now. Indurain trying desperately to ride alongside him and remind him just who he is. Richard Virenque takes a good look at them. He continues to build his lead in the King of the Mountains. Yet another brutal acceleration by Bjarne Riis. Another attack by Bjarne Riis. This has got to be his third or fourth attack here. He keeps on softening them up, but they still claw their way back up. This he's keeping on a little bit longer because he spread the whole field in this breakaway as Bjarne Riis goes once more. I think it's Laurent Dufaux who's trying to get up to him. And Indurain is slipping down. He's lost the grip of first wheel up by the leader, Bjarne Riis. Indurain is moving back down the field here, and I wonder if he's cracked again. Indurain, it seems, started this climb with the determination to show either himself or the race he was still very much in it, because he rode right on the front, but he could not take that third or fourth acceleration from Bjarne Riis. He's now under that 5 kilometers to go banner. His lead is nosing up. This is the chase group of Bjarne Riis, led by Laurent Dufaux, Richard Virenque, Luc Leblanc. Leonardo Pipoli is the fourth man who's done a good ride to get across. Rominger now the driving power in the chase group, trying to recuperate some of that lost time. They're not going to catch this man, though. He won at Sestriere to get the yellow jersey. He's now going to win his first day in the Pyrenees at Hautecam to increase his lead in it. And what class! Virenque, Dufaux, Pipoli sitting here at the back as he rides behind the 3 Frenchmen, well, 2 Frenchmen and a Swiss, but 3 French-speaking riders. And look at this now, a signal from Riis to say, it's me, I'm number 1. A determined face on him, he sprints up towards the line. This is going to be one of Bjarne Riis's greatest ever victories now, to win at a stage like this when you wear the maillot jaune, to look at the riders and blow them one by one off your wheel. You know you are the very best. Tony Rominger is going to be best of the rest with a 6th place finish, but he's going to lose the best part of a minute and a half or more. And just behind him is Jan Ullrich, another fine ride by this youngster who was the 1993 World Amateur Champion. A great sprinter, a great time trialist and a great climber. All the qualities you need to one day win the Tour de France. Miguel Indurain is going to finish in 12th place, a far cry from the 2nd place just behind Luc Leblanc of 2 years ago when he was already in a commanding overall lead. I think it's safe to say now Indurain is not going to win his 6th successive Tour de France, and he'll stay a member of the famous 5 club.
In stage 13, 1997, we saw Marco Pantani take a win on L'Alpe d'Huez.
Indeed we did. This great cycling shrine, it's where the crowds become exhibitionists and the riders become angels. Marco Pantani was demonstrating how good he was at climbing mountains in front of 750,000 fans, and he was simply fantastic. Well, I think this is really the climb everybody has been waiting for, Paul, and immediately the yellow jersey is there, the polka dot jersey is there, and Casagrande is there, and Riis is there.
Well, that's remarkable because, Phil, this is the mecca of the climbs for all of the climbers. Every climber wants to win here on Alpe d'Huez, and I'm quite sure Richard Virenque does as well, because he's never won a stage of the mountains in the Alps.
That's right, but he has won 2 stages in the Pyrenees as he now dances behind Jan Ullrich. This rider certainly isn't afraid to carry that maillot jaune right at the front of affairs, is he?
Well, it's amazing. He's now the leader of the Tour de France, and I would have thought that Bjarne Riis would have come to the front to help him out just a little bit, because he does need some encouragement. He does need somebody alongside him just to say, look, the team's here, we're still supporting you.
He's still looking for Bjarne Riis. He constantly looks over his shoulder to see where Riis is. He is an amazing rider. It's almost as if he's the reluctant leader of the Tour.
It's very strange to see him riding like this. There on the right-hand side is Elefantino, Marco Pantani, now nicknamed also El Pirato, the pirate. And he really is trying to put some pressure on these riders. Now he moves to the front, and Riis still looking very comfortable.
Well, he too has scored big victories in the Pyrenees, now looking for a win in the Alps as well. This is a savage acceleration by Pantani. This is on the early slopes of the climb as well. Virenque is the answer to it. He's right with him, but I wonder what damage he's doing behind. Everybody is filed out behind Marco Pantani. Ullrich is there as well. We saw Pantani throw his hat off just before he came through to start this acceleration. And this is the secret of good climbers, Paul, the way they can accelerate.
Well, it's not just that, it's the way they can accelerate again and again.
Now we've got these 4 riders going up the slopes. I have never seen so many people on this mountain, and I've seen every climb here except the one of Fausto Coppi. I'm not quite as old as 1952.
Well, Pantani's great to see him back. There's the earring that's earned him the nickname of the pirate. He's just getting into a rhythm here, just putting the pressure on everybody else. Looks over his shoulders to see what sort of damage he's doing. But, you know, he really is flying, and I think most certainly he's back And I was quite convinced after that crash he had in the Tour of Italy that we wouldn't see a great Marco Pantani here in the Tour de France, but I think he certainly is back, and he's great.
A glance at the second group here. We've just seen Olano. There's Jimenez, the champion of Spain. There's Olano, 151. Escartin is here. Now, this is interesting. That's Laurent Madouas also in this group. Now, look at this, Paul. We've gone back to the leaders just in time because it looks as though they've cracked Rees.
Well, I think he's put the white flag up there because he couldn't stay with the pace being set by the two climbers. He's just going to ride at his own pace now and leave it up to Jan Ullrich in the yellow jersey to mark the two best climbers of this year's Tour de France, Marco Pantani and Richard Virenque. But still, Ullrich looking very calm, sitting down. It's amazing the power he uses when he climbs. And a man who thought he could ride well on the Alpe d'Huez, Luc Leblanc, also falling away from the leader. He's a long way behind.
Well, this hasn't been the season for poor Luc Leblanc. He was looking set, and oh crikey, back to the leaders, and it looks as though Ullrich has cracked, unless Virenque opened the door and pulled round behind him.
Well, I think Virenque just couldn't stay on the wheel of Marco Pantani, and the reaction now has come by Jan Ullrich, and he's closed down on Pantani, the climber, so it just goes to show how strong the man from Germany is. To respond to an attack like that really is quite remarkable. The one man struggling now, Phil, is Richard Virenque. In fact, that acceleration out of the corner there has put the climber from France into difficulties, and he couldn't stay with the two leaders. So now just two men up the road, Marco Pantani in the yellow jersey of Jan Ullrich. But look at the face on Richard Virenque. He's suffering like a dog, and all he can do now is just hope that he can pull himself back.
Well, he knows he has a little bit of time in hand, and it's probably just as well, because I think he's finally decided to let the little pirate escape. He's 9 minutes 11 seconds behind Jan Ullrich in the overall classification, lying 5th at the moment, and so every pedal rev now will gain time on everybody in the Tour.
Well, the time gap's there, 22 seconds to Jan Ullrich, 42 seconds to Richard Virenque, and 1 minute 22 to Bjarne Riis. So Riis falling away quite rapidly.
Now, this is not going to be the Tour of Bjarne Riis now, but it's still looking like the Tour of Jan Ullrich, because he's still second on this mountain despite the escape of Marco Pantani. Virenque isn't far behind. Casagrande, Riis, and we haven't caught sight of those for a while, but they are the next on the climb.
Here, in fact, he's joined by Francesco Casagrande, the Casagrande at the front in the red jersey. He's setting the pace, trying, I think, to make sure that Bjarne Riis and himself stay in the picture. But Marco Pantani, well, he's on a mission. He's looking to become the first rider to win 2 years in succession, I suppose, because the Tour didn't come here last year, so he's really hoping that he's going to be the champion and really walking himself into third place. This is the first time that Jan Ullrich would have experienced this climb with all the crowd out there. A lot of Germans have come now to the Tour de France as well to support this man, because I think they can see the makings of a champion, a new man on the block, the man who I think is probably going to dominate the Tour de France for the next few years. But Phil, just look at the crowds.
Well, officially they're telling us that 750,000 people are lining the 9 miles of Alpe d'Huez today. That might be an exaggeration, but when you see shots like that, I'm no longer sure it is. And Marco Pantani has now got himself between the barriers, the safe stretch of the course. These barriers put up after that debacle we had a few years ago when Fabio Parra was brought literally to a standstill by the crowd and the block cars. But a fine right-hand turn by Marco Pantani. Taking your advice there, Paul, he went round the outside.
But I don't think he expected to be going quite that fast. He's flying up the final kilometre here of the Alpe d'Huez. But, you know, I hope he doesn't make the mistake he made 2 years ago, because he also nearly lost it in the final left-hand bend to the finish and went straight on into the parking lot.
Well, this time I think he'll be guided simply by the crowds and the barriers. We're now into the lovely town here on the top of the mountain of Alpe d'Huez. This town literally opens for the arrival of the Tour de France. In the next 48 hours, it will have all closed down again, awaiting the ski season. But at this time of the year, in July, it is vibrant, and there are thousands of people here now. We're going into the lower slopes of its streets, and then it will climb steadily to the summit.
Jan Ullrich riding very sensibly, still hovering around 25 seconds behind Marco Pantani. He's not pulling anything back, but I think he'll be very happy with the ride that he's put in today. But Pantani now into the town square. Across the town square, he'll get the left-hand turn, and then it'll be up to the finish.
He's got about 600 metres lead over Jan Ullrich as he heads up towards the finish. That's around 35 seconds. All the road is his now as he moves into the last 500 metres to the line. There'll be the sharp left-hand turn where even Greg LeMond has made a mistake at one occasion finishing here. You've got to watch it. It's easy to overshoot it, but Pantani now, this victory is going to be equally as special to him as Zabel's revenge on his disqualification last week was to him, because this means he is back as a big-time climber. He didn't have time to see himself on the big screen there as he swung round the left-hand bend, but now he's going to win this stage the second time in succession, although there's a gap of 1 year in between. Marco Pantani of Mercatoni Uno will be the winner at Alpe d'Huez today. He will gain time on everyone. He will climb up the overall classification as well. This is going to be a great feeling for him. He gets the victory, 203 kilometres covered. He's the first to the top of the Alpe, and the gap is around about half a minute for the next man. The Maillot Jaune of the Tour de France, Jan Ullrich, is coming home, and Ullrich again confirming he is most definitely the man to beat in this year's Tour, and I don't think anybody can or will.
The mountain parallel with Alpe d'Huez is Les Deux Alpes, and we go there for our next stage, stage 15, 1998.
Yes, this was a long stage as well, just under 5 hours. The weather conditions were not good, and it wasn't a good day for Jan Ullrich. He was in trouble at the bottom of the climb because he'd had a flat tyre. The Pirate was getting ready to leave the ship, and once we got onto the climb, of course, he would attack. It was a tough one for Ullrich, and it put his Tour in danger, and looking for the race lead was a man called Marco Pantani. And the man had attacked on the giant Col de Galibier as well, but still with 45 kilometres to go had he gone too far. Ullrich was forced onto the fence all of the time. This was to be a great stage, and in the thick of it too was Bobby Julich. And now, as we move on towards the Col de Galibier, conditions haven't changed at all here. Adolfo Massi has picked up both climbs of the Col de Croix de Fer and the Col de Telegraphe. The conditions here on the Galibier are quite atrocious now. We're going up to the highest point of this year's Tour de France, and Pantani isn't going to wait. We're a long way from the top and a long way from the finish here, and nobody's reacted.
I make it 11 kilometres to go to the summit here, Phil, and Pantani has not waited. In fact, he's looking over his shoulder to see if there's any reaction behind, and it's coming from Luc Leblanc. Now, this man crashed on the first climb of the day, the Col de Croix de Fer. It didn't seem to affect him at all, and now he's got help, and that's what he wants, because there's an awful long way to go to the finish from the top of the Col de la Galibier, but it looks as if Luc Leblanc is in serious difficulty.
Well, he's tried to go across to Pantani, but I don't think he's going to even get onto him here, because the weather is bad, and I think Luc Leblanc is thinking better of the attack here. Certainly no reaction at all from Ullrich, content to set the tempo, because remember, this attack has gone very early. Once we go down off the Galibier, we run through the valley before we climb up to the finish at Les Deux Alpes, and this has caused all sorts of consternation now.
What a move by Pantani there. He's going to pick up Christophe Renera, who was away at the bottom of this climb now, and I'm sure he will go straight by him.
This is a serious move today by Marco Pantani. Remember, just over 3 minutes behind overall at the start of this stage. He's no longer looking for stage wins, Paul.
He certainly isn't. He's trying to blow the Tour de France apart this afternoon. Now, there is one of the team soigneurs, I think, from the Mercatoni squad. Now, that is probably an illegal move there, passing up a bottle to Pantani and also passing up a racing cape.
Well, somebody's gone behind that caravan. It looks as though it might be Bobby Julich in the corner there. It is. Julich's going straight on. He was trying to put his cape on as well.
Well, he lost it going around the corner there, obviously deciding to go straight on instead of trying to turn around there, and he's going to be quite scared on the descent now. He's obviously used that opportunity to stop and put his cape on. He's trying to wrap it up now. All of these riders trying to keep as warm as possible, because it's very difficult. Phil, there's a problem here with the yellow jersey.
Well, the yellow jersey, I think, has got a flat tyre, and it's another puncture here. We're not very far away from the climb of Les Deux Alpes either, and the weather conditions have closed in, and once again, Jan Ullrich is finding the Tour de France is not his friend.
Well, on the slope of the Deux Alpes already, Marco Pantani has started to climb up towards the finish, but that was a very slow wheel change for Jan Ullrich there, picking his way through the cars, and you can see there, this town we're coming into now is the start of the climb, Les Deux Alpes, so Jan Ullrich once again in difficulty at the bottom of a mountaintop finish.
Well, we are going to struggle to bring you the pictures now, but that is the time gap, I presume, back to the Jan Ullrich group, and that is 4 minutes, which puts Pantani in the yellow jersey now, and already Ullrich is out of it. What an amazing tour this is turning out to be, and we're still being run off at record speed.
And the big problem for Ullrich this afternoon is he does not have any teammates with him. They've all been left behind on the slopes of the Galibier, and Marco Pantani is riding a time trial here to what for him I think is going to be a second victory, because he's not showing any signs of being affected by the cold weather. He hasn't got a raincoat on now. He's obviously thrown that away, and he's going to ride up this mountain as fast as he can. But the drama further back, Phil, is Jan Ullrich cannot get into a rhythm, and in fact he's losing time on the Bobby Julich group, and still he has nobody to help him.
It appeared initially he was coming back, but he looks to me as though he's not just cracked physically, he's cracked mentally here. And the way he's dropped back now, he's a very lonely rider indeed. Nobody around to help him, and his Tour de France could be running away from him. And I never thought we'd say that this year. Well, he's very, very unhappy, that's for sure now. He's a little bit confused as well, is young Jan Ullrich. The Tour de France, he obviously didn't have the right depth of his form. We were wondering if he was overweight. He certainly isn't that, but I'm wondering too if his preparation hasn't been quite right this year. And Pantani is now going to find out the answer to that, because he is putting home the attack here. He is gaining minutes over the rest of the race. Here's Bogert now, but still staying in the frame.
Well, there's Bobby Julich as well, setting the pace, trying to pull back a little bit of time on Marco Pantani, but it's slipping away. 4 minutes and 4 seconds, 41 seconds behind him is Jan Ullrich. So Ullrich is slipping away, and Bobby Julich could be riding himself into the yellow jersey.
And there is now, Rees has now picked up Jan Ullrich, so it's looking as though he might get a little bit of help at hand here. And you know, I keep thinking about Les Deux Alpes, because they got the Tour away from Alpe d'Huez. The first time the Tour has been here, it's probably the most dramatic day we've seen in Tour history, in modern Tour history, and they've got weather like this.
It's quite a shame, but it really has created a dramatic race. Here's Bjarne Riis now trying to come back up to Jan Ullrich. It's as if the whole of the Telefcom team have been devastated this afternoon. The racing has actually been up the Deux Alpes before, because the Tour of Italy came here several years ago. On that stage, it was Marco Pantani's teammate Bobrick who won the stage, and Pantani had a very bad day then. But today it looked as if he's turned the tables around, because he's flying up this mountain and really writing his name into a legendary mountain stage of the Tour de France.
Well, as we saw earlier, this mountain is for the Italians today. The borders are not very far away as the road goes on towards Sestriere. And Marco Pantani is giving the Tifosi exactly what they wanted to see. But I don't think even they believed they were going to see more than this man win the stage, and they are. They're going to see this man pull on the maillot jaune. Well, look at this now. Ullrich officially is 6 minutes and 10 seconds back now as Jimenez goes down on the inside of them. He was up with Pantani at one stage and he's completely blown. Jan Ullrich is suffering badly here. 6 minutes, I can't believe it. And almost 6 hours in the saddle as Marco Pantani comes into view of the crowd at the top of Les Deux Alpes. And again, a very fast stage, 33 kilometers an hour. So he's done it again. He's this time, though, what he wants is waiting for him. When he saw the route back in October, he said, the Tour isn't for me, I'll come out and win stages. He seemed to confirm that with a terrible prologue time, and now in the Pyrenees and the Alps, he's come right back into the reckoning. And Bobby Julich will not let go of this year's Tour de France. He continues on as he races now up to the finish. Also already gone through is Christophe Renero, so Julich will get 5th on the stage. And a lot further down, watch the time on the right here. Ullrich is 9 minutes back today. Nobody would have put a bet on that. Our camera's unable to follow Massey Escartin and Renero, but Bobby Julich was right in there, and I bet he was surprised today by the performance of Marco Pantani.
As the decade ended, Lance Armstrong started his reign as a champion in Stage 9, 1999.
Well, yes, indeed. After all of the colourful history of Lance Armstrong, he'd proved in his comeback Tour de France he really was a threat. He'd claimed the yellow jersey back off Jan Kirsipuu, and now he was on the big climbs, the very same climb that not so long ago Claudio Chiappucci had showed us what a good climber he was. But now the flags were for America. Well, we're on the Galibier now, and it should be enough to see him first over the top, but I really feel that this man Arrieta is out to soften them up for Alex Zülle further back. This is Casero now, and look at this, Armstrong is riding back up to them.
The sun has come out for Lance Armstrong to shine on him, because they didn't panic at all, US Postal. They waited until they got to the summit of the climb, and then they opened up the gas a little bit. Kevin Livingstone has done a remarkable job for Armstrong, and Virenque is accelerating to try and get himself some points in the King of the Mountains competition, but they are going to go to Arrieta, who will go over the top in first position here.
Indeed he will, and it is Virenque who's chasing him. His colours do look alike with Casero at the moment with his Polti colours, but this man is going to stop and pull on his rain cape. Now, as we start on to the next climb of the day here, up the climb of Mont Genève, this is the stepping stone to Sestriere. The top of this climb takes us into Italy, and a general regrouping. They're only 44 seconds back now.
And a lot of big riders in that group. Pavel Tonkov, Abraham Alano, they're all trying to get themselves back up to the yellow jersey group of Lance Armstrong.
Well, the field regrouped, a front group of some 9 riders getting together on the descent of the Galibier down into Briançon. And now on this climb here, Armstrong looks to be looking very, very good indeed here. We've got Casero and Virenque both together, and sitting there at the back is Contreras.
His face is complete concentration. He doesn't seem worried at all in these mountains. People like Chris Carmichael felt that Armstrong would be stronger in the mountains than in the time trial. Confirmation of the gap back to Abraham Alano's group there, 1 minute and 20 seconds. But the big climbers of the Tour de France here are in this group with Lance Armstrong. 1 kilometre to go to the summit of the Col de Mont Genève, and he's really doing a great job eliminating one man who he thought was a great challenger, and that's Abraham Alano.
And now Virenque is going for the King of the Mountains points here. Looks across. Armstrong allows nothing to move.
Armstrong very attentive, just waiting for any acceleration from these climbers. He used his team perfectly as Virenque goes over the top to get maximum points there. He waited until the last possible moment, and then when he had to assume control, he went away on his own and countered all of the moves. He's riding like a real champion, like a real master tactician. That's why he's used his team, and now he has to assume control at the front of the race.
And the gap has opened back to the Armstrong group. There's the Armstrong group, and 2 climbers unusually breaking away going downhill now have the advantage here on the way up to the finish. But this chase group here trying to reorganize itself. There'll be nothing from Contreras now because he's got his man away. Well, this is Kurt van der Wouwe who's giving the Lotto team some hope that they have finally got themselves a climber on that team. Well, look at that. Armstrong has gone. He must have read our caption. 32 seconds to the 2 leaders, and he must have realised that is enough. He's now gone. Now, can they answer this one, Paul? Because the acceleration of this man is incredible. He's looking so good.
That was unbelievable. He took a few risks going up through the inside there because somebody could easily have closed the door on him. The reaction came from Contreras to try and pull it back. He's gone round that corner so quickly. He's taken it very wide. Alex Zulla's the man who must respond. 161, the white shirt there on the shoulders of the Banesto rider. He has to try and get up to Armstrong, but Armstrong is flying away.
Front, but the acceleration of Armstrong is absolutely frightening here. This is the sort of move that you would have seen Eddie Merckx do in his day, and not the sort of move we ever saw Miguel Indurain do.
But look at that time gap. He's already nailed it down to 11 seconds. He's just 11 seconds behind Escartin and Gotti in the space of less than 1 kilometre. He's ripped across that gap, and he's riding a superb race now. But there is a response coming from behind, and that is from Alex Zulla. Zulla realises that this is a dangerous move by Armstrong. There are the 2 leaders, Escartin in the green. That's Gotti in the yellow and red jersey from the Polti squad. But Armstrong has just ridden across like they were standing still.
Well, Lance Armstrong, who 18 months ago was contemplating a bleak future, never mind riding in the yellow jersey in the Tour de France, this was his big test day today, his next big test, and look how he's answered it. He's come right up to the 2 climbers. Goodness knows what Escartin thinks now. He's staring at the yellow jersey in the face.
Well, he must have expected to be able to put Lance Armstrong into difficulty today because Armstrong has not really known as a major climber. This is his first real test.
And now this is Zulla. Zulla is trying to get across on his own, so that group has been completely blown apart now. Alex Zulla is having to ride across to join this very elite front group, and I'm not so sure he can make this. We've got 3 up front. Well, around this corner here now, they might be able to see the chalets of Sestriere. This has been a good recovery by the Banesto rider. Zulla is inch by inch coming back up alongside these 3 front runners. So that leading group of 9 is now a very select front group of 4. Well, almost anyway.
Gotti again trying to put the others into difficulty. They've looked over the shoulders and seen the return of Alex Zulla. But this is a great ride. This is what a champion is all about.
And now look at him. He's lifted the pace again. Gotti is in trouble, and Escartin isn't looking too happy either.
Gotti couldn't stay on the wheel of Lance Armstrong, and it was up to Fernando Escartin to respond. He's losing 2 or 3 bike lengths there, but that's not a problem. He's going to close it down on Lance Armstrong because he is a fantastic climber. But in fact, Armstrong looking over his shoulder, he's seen he's got the gap, and he's going to keep going.
I think you're absolutely right, and in fact Armstrong here is just lifting his pace, and he's just riding three of the finest climbers in the world off his wheel, and he's jumped out of the saddle. He's suddenly accelerated, and look at the gap.
Well, he couldn't believe it. He looked over his shoulder and saw that he had a gap. He could see that they weren't responding to him. And that's when he got out of the saddle. That's when the attack came. He already had 10 lengths advantage. This is phenomenal. He's out of the saddle, pushing it home now. And this is when he's really got to stick the knife into the wound and go for it to the summit of this climb. The first day in the mountains come down with a big hammer on the head of the climbers.
Well, Armstrong came to the Tour de France as an outsider, possibly to finish well up. But now he really is looking like the possible winner of the Tour de France here. He's won both time trials. He's now heading up to a likely victory here at Sestriere. If you can win the time trials and you win the mountains, well, there's not much left but to win the Tour de France. And now Zuller is seemingly the only man between him and victory in Paris, because here he goes. He's dropped the other two and he's trying to reach Lance for the second time on this climb. The finishing line is just up the road.
His last time check, we got to Alex Zuller, whose second on the road at the moment is 45 seconds. So Armstrong is opening up serious gaps. Very shortly, he will get right into the town of Sestriere. And for the first time since the valley, the road will flatten out a little bit and he will get a chance to breathe a little bit more freely, because then he will know that he's going to get the stage victory and increase his lead. The stars and stripes, they're all over France and Italy now, Phil, because this man is starting to get himself a pretty serious following.
But it's a long time since it flew for the leader on the yellow jersey of the Tour de France, and now it's flying for Lance Armstrong. This incredible fairy tale for him as he now pounds the road of Sestriere to an increase in his overall lead in the Tour de France. Armstrong has ridden brilliantly as he comes up towards the line. The rain has started to come down again as he races into the Italian village of Sestriere, where some of the great champions have won here in the past. But this man has got to be one of the greatest now. He looks over his shoulder. He will see no one. Zuller is around about 30 seconds behind. He does up the zip on his maillot jaune, and he's going to feel very safe tonight, even though we have a really tough day to Alpe d'Huez tomorrow in the mountains. Armstrong now has destroyed the field. He has spread them across the mountain by the best part of an hour today. A number of riders have given up, and the arms go up in salute. So Lance Armstrong there, showing us how to climb mountains at the right speed to win stages of the Tour de France. Now here's Bill Strickland with some tips to help make you a better climber. Bill.
Thanks, Phil. First, we're going to take a look at how these champions climb in the saddle. Sitting is the most efficient way to climb. When you stand, you use about 12% more oxygen and spike your heart rate by about 8%. So it makes sense to stay seated as often as you can. Look at the racer's elbows, which stay bent and relaxed, and their backs, which never hunch. This keeps your diaphragm open for easy breathing and also keeps you from rocking on the bike, which wastes energy. Like our climbing champs, keep your hands on the brake hoods, or about a thumb's length from the stem on either side of the bar. You'll have more control, breathe easier, and stay loose. All riders start to tense up when the effort gets hard. To prevent this, focus on 3 key areas. First, move your jaw to keep it from clenching. Next, drop your shoulders to keep them from hunching. And finally, wiggle or drum your fingers. These 3 areas are barometers for the rest of your body. If you keep them loose, chances are the rest of your body will be relaxed as well. Synchronize your breaths to pedal strokes. This helps you pace yourself up the climb. Another breathing trick: to get great oxygen transfer, push your stomach out as you inhale. This takes practice. Most of us naturally pull our stomachs in when we inhale. As the climb progresses, alternate your position. Shift your weight back on your saddle to use your powerful hamstring and glute muscles. For continuous, intense power output, when the pedal reaches the 5 o'clock position, pull backward on it. You're doing this right when your heel drops on the downstroke. Then, after a few minutes, scoot forward toward the nose to give those muscles a rest and use your quads. 2 other positioning tips. With your upper body bent forward about 45 degrees, you use mostly the muscles in your butt and lower back. Sit more upright and you put more burden on the thigh muscles. Doing this can give one set of your muscles a temporary rest while you use the others. And the final point about sitting. Don't worry if you lightly bob your upper body. The more still you are, the less energy you waste. But even the greatest climbers bob slightly. It keeps us loose and helps establish a pedaling rhythm. Although standing is less efficient, it's just as important to climbing success, because you generate a lot more power when you're out of the saddle. And it just looks cooler, too. When should you stand? Well, there aren't really any rules. Generally, light riders stand more often than heavy riders. The right mix for most of us is about 10 to 25% of our total climbing time. Stand when you're responding to attacks, when the pitch gets severely steeper, or if you start losing power in the saddle. To make a smooth transition, as one pedal goes down, shift your weight onto it and rise smoothly out of the saddle. Shift up 1 to 3 gears. You can handle bigger gears when you stand. Chiappucci, Pantani, and some of the other racers we've seen are some of the greatest out-of-the-saddle climbers ever. The idea of standing is not just to use all of your most powerful muscles, but to let gravity do some of the pedaling for you. Let your body weight move the pedals by dropping onto them. 2 final tips about out-of-the-saddle climbing. To get maximum power from your butt muscles, they should feel like you're standing to get up out of a chair, not bending to sit in it. It's a very fine difference, but an important one. And when you're on really steep stuff, climbs with a 10 to 20% grade, forget about pushing down on the handlebar with your arms. You'll climb better by pulling up on the bar on the same side as the downstroke. So far, we've talked about how to maximize your climbing ability, how to be a star. But what about those times when all you want to do is hang on to your friends and finally reach the top with the group instead of behind it? Here's a great strategy for survival. Most riders begin a hill in a comfortable gear and shift to progressively easier gears as climbing effort increases. Our survival technique goes against instinct. You shift to a harder gear when you start to slow down. Here's how to do it. As you start the climb, shift to an easier gear sooner than you normally would. Spin away on the bottom 2/3 of the climb. Wait for the right time to make your upshift. When your cadence begins to fade and you start moving forward in the group as your overgeared companions slow and begin shifting to smaller gears. Shift to a harder gear, 1 to 3 cogs smaller, and stand. You'll have a slower RPM, but this allows a more powerful pedal stroke with the same energy output. Don't accelerate. Your tendency will be to stand on the gear too hard. This might feel great for a few strokes, but you'll end up paying for it. When you sit, shift back to the easier gear. This works because you save energy while others burn it, and keep your heart rate down even when you shift to harder gears. But stick with this sneaky technique and you'll surprise your Superfly friends and yourself.
Hey, thanks, Bill. It's too late for me to learn, but I hope the viewers have learned something today. Well, we'll leave you with some of the heroes of the Tour de France in these marvellous images of the years gone by. For Bill Strickland, I'm Phil Liggett saying, hope you enjoyed the tape. Goodbye.